Ladies and gentlemen, today on the podcast, we have Colonel Edward Arntson III. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Awesome. Really a pleasure to be here.
I'm pumped for this conversation.
Yeah.
You have 24 years?
24 years in the Army.
24 years military experience.
That's right.
I couldn't think of a better person to share real leadership value, experience, lessons. And, over these last 10 plus years of my life, I've learned that leadership is not a direct responsibility in an organization or a team or a unit, but it's to lead yourself, it's to lead your family, be a leader in society, in a community, in the world.
Absolutely.
It's a huge responsibility, an obligation, an opportunity that we have to lean into.
Yeah, absolutely.
But before we dive into some of this stuff, I was thinking about, we just got done working out.
Yeah.
How we got connected initially.
Yeah.
And it was a 5K.
It was the 5K at Fort Hood.
Yep.
Veterans Day 2024.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my guy at the time was working for me, Hayden Haupt, reached out to your team and to ask if you'd be interested in coming to do it. And I thought that was a fantastic event, just to celebrate veterans and all the things that they've done, continue to do in our communities, in our country. Number one, and then number two, your business is, you're a veteran, is a veteran-owned business, and for you to have been a veteran of the 1st Cavalry Division, and have served at Fort Hood, and come back and kind of lead that and be there with your team along with the RWB team was a really neat event and a lot of fun.
Yeah. Any opportunity that we can get re-engaged with the military community means a lot to me.
Absolutely.
We built the brand and the business, and our core values were solidified and founded during my time in the Army.
That's right.
Graduating from IUP, commissioning, spending a year at Fort Benning,
yep.
Coming down here to Fort Hood. I mean, those years, 2014 is when I first got to Texas at Fort Hood.
Okay.
Transitioned out of the Army in 2017 after a 9-month rotation in South Korea,
yeah.
Which I believe I was in South Korea right after you were there.
No, so we were there at the same time because you were down in 212 Cav.
I was.
And I was the Brigade S3. I was in Korea, right? I was there at Camp Hovey, working in the brigade headquarters. And I was there for the first 5 months of that deployment to Korea in early 2016, and then left there and went to Baghdad to work on the, at the time, the Combined Joint Task Force Operation Inherent Resolve staff. So left the job as the brigade operations officer for Iron Horse and went there. But we were there for about 5 months at the same time. I'm sure you had a lot of visits to Rodriguez Range Complex.
Oh, yeah.
And a couple of other spots. But yeah, we were there same time. So
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, those years for me were, like I said, foundational.
Yeah.
And they shaped me as a man.
Yeah.
As a leader, as a business owner. And it's been really enjoyable, these last couple of months, having you bringing parts of your team back to BPNHQ to run through several workouts.
Absolutely.
We've been really enjoying that. The team's been loving it. Just being exposed to the military community and leaders, and a lot of them just haven't been around that.
Yeah.
Or felt that energy before.
Yeah.
So it's been a great experience for the whole team.
Well, good. I'm glad. And I would just tell you that the feeling is mutual, that so many of our soldiers, of our leaders, now for me in 3rd SFAB, our advisors, look up to what you guys do here at BPN. And so the opportunity to partner on some things, to do some training, potentially do some stuff we're talking about in the future, I know is special to them, and the opportunities to come here and train, and in the videos that they, for them, it's only kind of existed online. The opportunity to come train here, meet your team is really neat. So we appreciate it.
No, thank you. Yeah, I'm looking forward to what we do in the future, and then the event at the ranch.
It's going to be awesome.
we'll break some people off and build them back up.
Yeah, it's gonna be good.
So I really want to focus on leadership throughout this conversation.
Absolutely.
And like I said, I don't think there's anyone better to talk about leadership. You know, I've been exposed to the military side. I've been exposed to the corporate side. I've been exposed to the founder, CEO, startup side.
Sure.
And I have so much respect for military leadership and what I learned during my short 4 years while in.
Yeah.
But I learned from some really great leaders, and I've also learned from some really bad leaders.
Yeah, that's right.
What to do and what not to do.
Yeah.
But before we dive into that, you know, I want to ask you a question and get your perspective on it. And I'm sure you've been asked this question before, and it might seem cookie cutter, but I'm really curious your perspective based off your experience. And it's, do you think leaders are born or built? And why I think your perspective is interesting is because in a workplace culture like I'm in right now with BPN, we can give people the time to develop as leaders.
Absolutely.
Because there is risk, but the risk is not lives.
Right.
You are operating in an environment where the risk of keeping a subpar leader in place and allowing them to develop on your time is the risk of lives in combat, in theater.
Yeah, it can be.
So do you think that true leaders are born or built, maybe a combination of two, but at the core are the best leaders? Do they have it in their blood? Is it in their DNA?
I do think for some of the very best leaders, Nick, I think it's kind of in their DNA. I really do. And you can maybe see that that might come across through some natural charisma that they've got, or ability to connect with people that they're leading. But I also think leaders can be trained, and leaders can be, in a sense that you described, built. And I think that takes, in many ways, you see this, and I can speak from the perspective of the Army. Sometimes it takes a few years before you really start to see the true potential in somebody come out. And as folks are given opportunities and I think continue to put forth effort, right? If someone is given a leadership opportunity and they put forth, almost no effort, it's like, okay, you have voted and, we're going to put you over here because you're clearly not valuing the opportunity to impact this formation, this organization, et cetera. But I think through consistent coaching, consistent counseling, and then also in the Army, education on, like on the institutional side, you can see folks really start to develop. And if people are putting forth the effort, you might not see somebody will say, you got out as a captain, but maybe somebody starts to really hit their stride at 4, 5, 6 years in the Army because they've had some foundational experiences, they've learned, they do have a little bit of natural ability, and then they really start to grow. They hit that one job, that one assignment that they've got, and then they're partnered maybe with the right, like we'll talk from the Army perspective, the right senior NCO that's there to coach and help lead a young officer. And then you might see that person really hit their stride and take off.
Yeah.
So, to really answer your question, I think for the super talented, guys that may go on, whether they have a deep career and future in the Army, or the military as a multi-star general, as a really senior non-commissioned officer, I do think some of those folks have that kind of innate in their bones. But I do think there's a large component that leaders can be trained and can be built over time. especially if you've got folks that are pouring into them, right, and developing them.
Yeah.
I'll give you one example from my time commanding Grey Wolf. I had a young officer, and in the Army, you get an evaluation report. And the sort of old school terminology is there's a center of mass and above center of mass. Now it's highly qualified or most qualified. Most qualified is a top block OER. And I brought this young man in, and he was on my staff, and I gave him a most qualified OER as his brigade commander. And I had asked him, hey, have you ever received an MQ OER before? He said, no, sir, this is the first one that I've ever received. And I was floored. I was absolutely floored because of how talented this young man was, how great of a teammate he was. And I mean, he's everything you'd want. He was humble. He was unselfish. He killed himself for the team. I mean, it was so impressive what this young man did. And then I gave him another opportunity. He absolutely smashed it as an operations officer for our support battalion. He absolutely crushed it. He's now a company commander. He's in Europe. He's doing fantastic over there, right? So just a little bit, sometimes it also takes, I think, a leader to recognize and just objectively evaluate folks to say, I really don't care what other folks have said about, this person. I see a tremendous amount of value and a tremendous amount of potential in this person, and I'm going to give him a chance, right? And I think this young man in particular that I'm talking about, I think if he wants to stay in the Army, if he wants to go in the business world, he's going to be incredibly successful regardless.
And sometimes you just need that small confidence booster.
Yeah.
To allow you to realize, oh, I got potential.
That's right.
As I was thinking about, as you were speaking, leaders who are born versus built. If I think of all the leaders that I've ever come across, even in this business, who I believe are natural, have natural born leadership abilities, it is that effort that you're talking about.
Yes.
They actually want to be leaders.
Yes.
And I've had to learn the hard way. I used to think that everyone wanted to level up. They start at a role here at BPN or in the military, and they enlist and they want to be a team leader. They want to be a squad leader.
Yeah.
They want to be a platoon sergeant.
Yeah.
Like they want more and more and more. And I thought everyone wanted that. And I learned the hard way that not everyone wants more responsibility.
100%.
In leadership. You have to have that drive in you. You have to have that dog. You have to have the effort.
Yeah.
Because I've tried to give people leadership responsibilities and they say, no, I don't want that.
That's right.
So I think part of the natural born ability is the desire.
Yes.
That you have to want to be a effective, strong leader. You have to want to lead people.
That's right.
You have to care about people.
Yes.
And at the core of leadership, that's what it is. And that's what we do.
100%.
It's all about the people.
100%. And I would say too, I've coached people for years in the Army to tell them that as you continue to get promoted, right? If you go from sergeant to staff sergeant to sergeant first class to master sergeant just in the Army, right? Or on the officer side, captain to major, lieutenant colonel, you have to be getting better. You have to be improving. If you as a lieutenant colonel are still doing, now it doesn't mean you remove successful practices that you do as a leader, but if you're not continually seeking ways to grow and improve as a leader, as you continue to progress in your career, and this is the same in the business world as well, then you're gonna likely flatline, and you'll kind of top out wherever that place is, that effort stops coming, that the intellectual curiosity, right, starts to die off, and then you're going to kind of flatline. What's the saying? Water finds its level, right? And then you're probably going to move out.
Yeah.
Now, some folks, they still might have that hunger, but maybe it's not, hey, I've still got this hunger, but I'm going to step away from the military and I'm going to do that in my community, in the business world or whatever. But some folks, they get comfortable, right? And then it's I don't, I want the promotion, I want the money,
without the responsibility,
and without the ability, to, keep progressing, keep improving, and figuring out new ways to just get better as a leader.
Yeah. Remind me, does OER stand for Officer Evaluation Report?
It does, yep.
And then NCOER is Non-Commissioned Officer Evaluation Report.
That is correct.
And these are essentially feedback reports on how an individual is performing at their role.
100%.
What is the cadence in which these are created and shared? Most
often annually.
Okay.
They can be created sometimes if there's a leadership changeover, which is called a change of rater. So, I'm working for Nick, but Nick changes out of his job because he's going to another job, and I've worked for him 6, 7, 8 months. Okay, that might generate an OER or an NCOER for our enlisted folks.
The reason I ask this, I think back to when I was in the Army as a platoon leader, and the OER and NCOER burden, if you will.
Sure.
It felt like a burden. It was just like, hey, we got to do this annually.
Yep.
Let's just get through it, do them. Now, as I reflect back on the importance and value of the OER and NCOER, I wish then I would have valued it more than I did. As we were talking when we were working out, how important it is for people under you when you're in a leadership position to know what success looks like.
Yes.
Like how do you measure success? And if someone who's working for you and you're leading someone doesn't know or understand what success looks like,
that's right.
It's really hard for them to work towards.
It is
a vision or a metric or a data point. And I'm thinking back as we're talking, man, I wish I would have really understood how valuable those NCOERs were.
Sure.
Because it would have allowed me to develop subordinate leaders in a more effective way.
Absolutely. It is a great time. And I'm glad you've reflected on that, Nick. And it's a great time to bring folks in and just say, hey, here's where I see you. Here's where you stand. Because the fact of the matter is, in the Army, we have so many incredible people. You're judged against your peers. And so only so many people can get promoted. Only so many people can get the top block OER, even with so many great folks. And so, but it's a great time to bring folks in, sit them down, and give folks feedback. I spent a lot of time, especially in my last brigade command, sitting down with folks and talking through with them where they stood, right? And then what the development plan for them was going forward. And sometimes you've got to spend a little more time with maybe the middle and not bottom, but just maybe some of the folks that didn't get a top block, because you got to sit down and explain to them where they need to improve. Sometimes your uber top performers, they just need hey, I need you to work on these 1 or 2 things. Everything else, keep doing what you're doing. And they're like, okay, hey, I got it, sir. Appreciate it. And those might be pretty short conversations with your uber high performers. But some folks that you want to kind of pour into and develop a little bit, those are the conversations that are actually can be a little bit longer, especially as you move on in the Army and these reports become consequential for promotion and moving on.
Do you think that the Army or the military as a whole is effective at the evaluation report process? And let me add some context to that.
Sure.
Feedback is hard.
It is.
Candid conversations, hard conversations are really hard.
Yes.
And it's much easier to avoid them than to confront them.
Yes.
And the reason I asked the question, when I transitioned out of the military and I started building BPN, those first couple months and even years were easy from a leadership perspective because I didn't have many employees to lead. And I didn't have to make many hard people decisions or have many hard conversations. But when I had to start letting people go and having the hard conversations, that's when it started getting challenging. But that's also where I started to really grow and develop as a leader.
Absolutely.
Those conversations used to be very challenging, and they're still difficult, but you become comfortable in the uncomfortable conversations because you know the growth that happens on the other side.
Absolutely.
How do you think, because I'm managing and running a company that has 45 people. We're talking the military. We're talking the Army. How many people are in the Army?
Let's see. I think you're talking 1 million. I think it's 1.1 million total, and there's about 500,000, just under 500,000 in the active duty force in the Army.
So if I think of just like that multiple and the amount of leadership that has to be so effective and strong.
Yeah.
How effective do you think the evaluation report process is? Are those hard conversations being had, or can they be better?
Just to be very frank, I think some people do it better than others. I had captains that came in and I sat down with in my previous brigade command, and I haven't really got to with 3rd SFAB now, where I command now. I haven't really had a lot of those conversations yet because we're kind of usually OER season, NCOER season is like spring and summer, right? As folks are transitioning. So we haven't had that yet. But in my previous command, I'd sat down with captains and sometimes they'd say, hey, sir, this is the first time anyone's actually counseled me. This is a captain who's maybe been in the Army 6, 7, or 8 years. And, I kind of think that's criminal, that someone didn't sit them down and go through with them, strengths, weaknesses, development plan. What do you want to do in the Army? What are your goals? And so simply put, I think some folks do it better than others. And I would say if you're doing it right, you can take care of, there's a personnel in the civilian world, it would be HR side of this. If you're doing it right, you can take care of a lot of people. There were a lot of company commanders in Grey Wolf in my last brigade, I think, that are going to get promoted to major because, we knew the right way to do it in terms of, how I wrote reports for folks, but then also to take care of the most quality folks in the organization that really deserved it and that wanted to go on and continue and to continue to serve as majors and continue to be senior leaders in the Army. And yeah, a lot of those conversations, they can be difficult, especially with folks who maybe think, hey, I think I'm at this level. And then you as their boss are telling them, hey, I'm sorry, I don't see you there. And here's why. And I think, we were talking a little bit about, tone range fan. I think you can have very sincere and you can have very direct conversations with people, that are effective in the leader development realm if your tone is right. Mm-hmm. And you're not, it's not a, hey, my name's Ed and I don't like you. And so, here's your center of mass report. Goodbye. It's here's where I see you relative to your peers. And if you want to continue to have an opportunity to advance, here's where I think you need to improve.
Right.
And have some data, have some metrics for these folks, or have, it's very, very tangible examples of, hey, there was a time where I was really looking for you and counting on you in this, in this exercise, in this time period, and I didn't really see what I was looking for out of you. And I think for folks if you're having those honest conversations, I think you get good self-assessment out of folks too, where they sit back and they're like, yeah, sir, if I reflect on that, I probably wasn't at my best then.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can have a dialogue about how to improve instead of, kind of arguing with the ref. Well, that's BS, and you didn't see this and you didn't see that. And that, those conversations can be a little bit counterproductive.
Right.
And I've had conversations with folks that write extremely consequential reports, especially for the majors that I served as, it's called their senior rater in the Army. I had one guy in particular, had done good work, but I wasn't necessarily seeing him with the other top majors in the brigade. And I told him where I saw him, and he was very professional, very calm, and he kind of argued his case for why he thought, hey, sir, here's why I think I'm in the top tier instead of kind of the center tier. And we had a really good conversation about it. He did not get upset. He did not get defensive, right? His tone towards me he was still humble. He was still very respectful. And he very clearly laid out what he had done. And some of those things I frankly hadn't taken into consideration. And I kind of stepped back. I went and talked to my personnel officer and I said, hey, how can we do this? How can we take care of this officer? And he was like, this is kind of how I think we can do it, And I was like, okay, let's do that. And I called him about 10 minutes later and said, hey, man, I'm going to bump you up. And he was like, hey, sir, thanks. I really appreciate it. Right. But if he had been defensive, if he had kind of come at me, sort of like, arguing with the flag on the play, mm-hmm. I don't think that would have gone well for him. But in his case, right, we were having very direct, very sincere conversation about areas where I thought he fell short. But then he's like, hey, sir, what about all these areas where I think I've done really well? And it's like, man, it's a good point. Let me go back and see what I can do.
I was going to save this part of the conversation for later on, but I feel like this is a good segue. Talking about the tone range fan.
Yeah.
And we will link this article that you created within the show notes of this episode.
Awesome.
I think it's really powerful.
Yeah.
As I was telling you earlier, I'm currently reading The Energy Bus by John Gordon.
Awesome book, yeah.
It's a great book. It's pretty simplistic.
Very simplistic.
In form and storytelling and just the message of positivity. But considering yourself a leader, energy and tone are so important.
Absolutely.
Now I was just thinking about what leadership is. Leadership is its vision, its communication, its courage, its energy, its tone, its humility, as you talk about.
Absolutely.
Selflessness, rooted, firm, steady. And if you can get energy right and get tone right, that breaks down a lot of barriers.
It does.
That people put up in almost a defensive position.
It does.
Yeah, you were talking about just how that major had a productive conversation with you.
Yeah.
In a healthy defense to his evaluation.
That's right.
The opposite of that, like you talk about in this article, intellectual arrogance.
Yes.
Often another cornerstone of our worst tone. Intellectual arrogance is driven in large part by the fact that a leader's or subordinate's ideas are the best and that everyone else's are the worst, which is driven by pride,
yes,
ego, arrogance,
yes, insecurity.
I personally really dislike when I'm going to have a conversation with someone and I'm faced with intellectual arrogance.
Oh.
Because you know that conversation is going to be unproductive.
Yes.
And that you almost have to really guide them into where you're trying to get to.
Absolutely.
But I want to hang around this tone range fan a little bit and how you got to this realization and these concepts, because as I was reading through the article you shared with me, I sent this to some of my advisors.
Okay.
I sent it to our leadership team, our brand team, because if people can understand this, matched with energy,
yes,
it will make them a much more effective leader through communication.
Absolutely. Yeah. For me, it came about, I developed it in command of Grey Wolf, and it was something I put on my whiteboard, and something that I had been thinking deeply about in my first 6 or 7 months in command of Grey Wolf. So early 2024. And I thought about it in terms of, in the Army, and then especially kind of in the combat arms side, you have a range fan for a weapon system, right? So you apply the range fan to the terrain to see, especially in a training environment, to see if, the training exercise that you're about to do, in most cases, in this case, it'd be a live fire exercise. Is this going to be safe relative to where we have people and live ammunition and targets, and then how the maneuver fits with all that? And so I started to think about how much, as a leader, your tone can be used, right, positively, right, when it's kept in. The way I was thinking about it is, hey, when your tone is within this range fan, it can be applied very effectively, and you can have the intended effect you want to have as a leader. And when it's applied the wrong way, when we get outside of what we call the surface danger zone for tone, whether you're a subordinate or a leader, when you get on the far right or left of the tone range fan, you start to have problems. Mm-hmm. It starts to be more about you and less about the development of your subordinates or the betterment of the organization. And so I have had the opportunity to coach a lot of folks using the tone range fan to help them improve as leaders, and really just help them see, do you understand that this is where you're being perceived in how you are engaging with your team, right? With your staff, with, if it's a company commander, with your company commander, if it's up to your boss. And so I've been able to, I think, make some breakthroughs with folks using that tone range fan to help them really just understand their impact, right? Whether it's up and out or whether that's down and in.
What's interesting about tone is that you have to be aware of the tone that you are using when you're talking to someone. And I'm sure we've heard or said it ourselves. I don't like that tone.
That's right.
I don't like that tone you got going with me right now.
Yeah.
Because even if you're saying something and you attend, but you actually feel something else, your tone will depict your true feelings.
That's right. It's 100%. I had a guy, he worked for me in this last command. He's still in Grey Wolf. He's the brigade operations officer. And we had served together at a previous duty station. And it was one of my first meetings. And I was a battalion commander at the time. And I had forgot about this interaction. And the guy I'm talking about, his name's Steve. Steve reminded me. He goes, sir, it's kind of funny you wrote an article about tone. And I was like, why is that? He goes, do you not remember one of your first interactions when you're a battalion commander and this other guy's, his name was Brett. And Brett was one of my company commanders. He's a great, great guy. We're still in touch. And Brett had said something to me, and there was a little arrogance and Brett's a great leader, great company commander, but there was a touch of intellectual arrogance and probably slight contempt in his voice as he was talking to me about something we were doing training wise inside the battalion. And I just turned to him and said, hey, Brett, I don't like your tone very much. Right. I think I'd been a battalion commander like 2 weeks or less. Yeah. And it was kind of a shot across the bow of like, oh, okay. And that kind of right-sized the conversation very quickly. But I'd probably been thinking about it all the way back to then. That was 2019, all the way up until, wrote the article last fall. So, yeah. And if I could share one story about this. And this was an area that I was very proud as a leader. I was really glad that I had the opportunity to do this. But the young man that I'm talking about, I was able to do this with him. We probably spent 30 or 40 minutes in his office and laying this out. And this is a guy who is extremely smart and very talented. And I attended his company training meeting, I did that very often in Brigade Command. And then afterwards I said, hey, let's go to your office. And we went to his office and had to have a conversation. And I said, hey, excuse me, how do you think your relationship is with your boss right now? And he kind of put his head down and he's like, sir, it's terrible. And I said, okay, whose fault is that? And he's like, it's my fault. And I was like, okay, got it. Now let's get to work. And I started drawing out the tone range fan on his whiteboard in his office. And we went through it in terms of how do you think you need to engage with your boss, right? To have the impact that you want to have, not only for your company, which is a very, very good company, but also for your battalion and for the brigade, right? And I laid that out. This was right before the Christmas holiday in 2024. We come back from the holidays, we go right into the field, right into a big training density prior to another rotation to the National Training Center in the spring of 25. And it was his boss, one of the battalion commanders, came to me and he said, I just said, hey, how's it going, right, with this officer? He's like, sir, I don't know what you said to him, but I am working with a different human being now than I did for the first 6 months of command. He is, the tone is different. The way that he approaches problems is different. The way he's leading is completely different. And I don't take credit for that. That's on this officer, this young man who did an incredible job and incredible self-reflection on, like, I got to change my ways. Like what I'm doing is I'm not leading myself well. I'm not leading my company well. I'm not being a good teammate. I'm not being a good subordinate. Absolutely flipped it. Performed incredibly during the training density. Incredible at the National Training Center, which is very, very hard. You did it right as a lieutenant. Incredibly hard. Month, 4 or 5 weeks there in California, and crushed it. And he's still leading that company and doing a phenomenal job. Right. And the tone range fans really what allowed us to have that conversation, him to visualize that and then absolutely flip it to where, he was, his boss told me, he's like, sir, frankly, he is a joy to work with now. Right. And that transition happened over about 2 months to where previously he would have been like, this guy, he's a burr in the sock. You know what I mean? Like this is not, burr in the saddle kind of deal. Like this is not enjoyable. So
I feel like it is an undervalued skill.
Yeah.
And focus is tone.
Yeah.
Now thinking back to some of the best leaders that I've worked with, worked under, worked alongside in the business world, but also during my time in the military, they had a very appropriate tone given the circumstance. And we were talking about this earlier as well, but the best leaders that I worked under and learned from were very consistent.
Yes.
Their tone was very consistent.
Yes.
When they were trying to coach and mentor and develop, it was a very reassuring coaching tone.
Yes.
It was calm. It was steady. They would use a more aggressive tone if needed.
Yeah.
And the message came across. It was loud and clear.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, hey, this is serious.
Yeah.
But knowing when to apply the right tone to certain situations and circumstances, but being consistent when you use that tone.
Absolutely.
I'm even thinking back to just being a leader in my household.
Yes.
in my family,
Yes.
with my kids,
Yes.
knowing when to apply the right tone.
Yes.
So as my kids are developing, because they're young right now, as they're developing and learning, they know what the tone means. But if I'm inconsistent with my tone, my kids will not respond to a fluctuation in that tone because I'm inconsistent.
That's right. And I will just tell you for myself, that is an area that I'm working on, the most, right? Is leading my family at home and applying, making sure that I'm consistent with what I wrote in that article and how the tone range fan is laid out when I engage, with my wife, with my son, with my daughter, to make sure that it's consistent and that it is focused on their development, right? And it does not become about me at all, right? It's about them and about the message that you're trying to communicate and a lesson or a principle that you're trying to teach them. And then also, just with my wife, right? That it is, that everything is on, equal footing, right? And that I'm always trying to have, we've been married for, this summer will be 23 years.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. And she is just such an incredible, godly woman. And that as I communicate with her, with Tracy, that I'm always, that I've got my best tone, right? That I'm, that I'm humble, that I'm deferential to her, in how I'm engaging with her, right, as we progress, to hopefully, 24, 25, 26 years, because those are the things that matter the most, to your significant other.
I feel like I should get my hand tattooed, energy and tone.
That's right.
Because I know there's moments where it's earlier in the morning.
That's right.
Kids wake up extra early. Steph and I use the wrong tone with each other. And we both look at each other like, let's not go there right now.
That's right.
And that's the power of tone. In this article, you describe the best tone, the coaching tone, the compassionate tone. And I highly recommend everyone who's listening to this episode go read this article. But you say that humility is the cornerstone of our best tone.
It is.
At what point in your career did you learn that? The power of humility?
Early in my career, I've been very fortunate. I worked for a lot of great leaders. But certainly as a junior officer, probably far too sarcastic, thinking other people are way more screwed up than they actually are, right? I'm sure you can relate to that. Most like platoon leaders think everyone else other than, at the rifle platoon level stink, or screwed up.
There was some ego and arrogance coming from a rifle platoon.
Yeah, right. You need some of that when it comes to, like operating in combat. You need some of that confidence and a little bit of that arrogance. But I would say for me, I went to 1st Ranger Battalion as a captain. I was a pretty young captain though, and I haven't talked about a lot that publicly. But I failed at 1st Ranger Battalion, and I did not do well there. And I think a lot of that was a lack of humility on my part. I thought that I had made it, that this was it. These guys are lucky to have me. And that did not translate well at all. And certainly in an unbelievably high-performing organization like any of the Ranger battalions or any of the other special operations units in our military, that did not translate well. And so much of that was on me. And that's where I really started to learn and really started to see the value of humility. Because as I looked around at other folks who were, whether they were succeeding in that environment that I was in at the time at 1st Ranger Battalion, or as I progressed in the Army, you're seeing folks they're unbelievably successful, but they're super humble about their own success, about their achievements. And as I went into my next assignment, I actually went to the Old Guard and served there as a company commander and as an operations officer before I went to the Staff College. And it was there that you start to really see the value of humility. Some of the folks that I had the opportunity to work for there, Dave Anders, Paul Edgar, work alongside Ed Mathias, who's now going to be a general officer. Friend of mine, James Stoltz, who's also, likely going to be a general officer. These guys are unbelievably humble human beings about, just their own personal capabilities, but then also kind of some of the things they've done in their career. And you really started to see that, I did, as the cornerstone for really high-level leadership.
Comparing your experience with, say, Ranger Battalion and the Old Guard, and contrasting that to, the traditional Army.
Yeah,
I'm curious, just some of the different leadership challenges, because as I look at units like Ranger Battalion and the Old Guard, like they are the best at what they do.
Sure.
They do the basics very, very well.
Oh, yeah.
They lock those down. And probably a lot of type A alpha mentalities, mindsets, probably a lot of ego and arrogance. And when you put a lot of people like that into one place, you need really strong leadership. It's like putting wild dogs in a room. It's like you need the alpha dog to control those dogs.
Yes.
What was that experience like compared to going back to, a traditional line unit? Obviously leading and managing and developing people at the core fundamental level.
Yeah.
But just differences in personality and drive and ambition and achievement and success.
Yeah. It's a great question, Nick. I would say, I'll talk a little bit about it from my perspective in the Old Guard, just because I spent a little more time there. A lot of the company commanders at the time had come off of, at that point, some guys were, good friend of mine, Steve Wallace. I think Steve at that point had done 3 full combat tours, maybe 2 to Afghanistan, 1 to Iraq at that point. And so several of my other friends that were there that were company commanders, that were peers, they were on their second or third combat tour, and they were coming to the Old Guard after that for, both another leadership developmental opportunity, but then also, in the Old Guard, most of the time you're not going to deploy. I actually deployed from the Old Guard, which is a very interesting experience.
Yeah, reading that in your bio, it was the first time that unit deployed since Vietnam.
Yeah, very interesting experience. But to talk about kind of those other alphas, I would say that's where we really saw, and one of the things I really experienced in the Old Guard that I loved was the teamwork amongst those other alphas. Those guys that were they're fantastic leaders in their own right. And that's where I think we saw, and I think other guys, everyone saw that in each other. They saw that, hey, this guy's a great leader. Anthony's a great leader. Andy's a great leader. Other folks that I worked with, and how do we work together, right, for the betterment of the battalion, of the regiment, et cetera. That was a really neat thing to be a part of, to learn and grow from observing those other folks, but not in a, yes, everybody wants to have the best company, et cetera, but it was not in a hyper competitive, I'm going to do whatever it takes to be better than you sort of deal. How do we work together and create some teamwork and camaraderie, right, amongst those folks that are all high-level folks?
That's challenging to do.
It's very, very challenging to do. And I would say that is where in our case, a lot of really good peer leadership came into play, where good dialogue amongst us peers really helped carry the day. As I remember back to my company commander days there, really good peer dialogue about, okay, you guys are doing this, well, what about that? We'd like to do this. And just really, really good teamwork in the genuine interest of everybody succeeding, not I need to be better than you.
Yeah. I'm kind of currently working through that here in BPN.
Okay.
Right now, I would say our brand and creative team is at its peak in terms of being effective and functional and working together, being a true team.
Yes.
But it took a lot of time and intention to get there.
Yeah.
One of the things I've learned over time, you look at sports teams.
Yes.
You can put the best players in their position on a team, but if they don't work as a team,
100%,
the team loses.
Yes.
And it sounds so fundamental and easy, but it's not.
Yes.
It is very challenging.
Yeah.
Our brand and creative team, we have, in my opinion, the best of the best. Designers, videographers, filmmakers, editors, directors.
Yeah.
And we thought just by putting all of the best into a room, we would then have the greatest output and teamwork and camaraderie. But what ends up naturally happening is, someone thinks they're pulling more weight. Someone wants to be better than the other. Someone thinks that they're pulling the others ahead or behind. And that's naturally going to happen.
Yeah.
So coming in and really developing subordinate leaders, seeing peer leadership step up.
Yep.
Brotherhood, sisterhood.
Yes.
Helping each other, and really realizing that the only way this business succeeds and the brand team wins and grows is together.
Yes.
There is not one person who's going to pull all of the weight. And that concept for me a few years ago was so easy and simple, but I've learned that people management and development and team building, it's challenging and it's not passive. It is active development.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. It is really, really challenging, especially when if we're doing something and maybe working on it together or whatever, but I want the credit for it.
Yep.
Right. I want the credit for it. And, I've done that before, 100%. You're doing something and it's like, I want the credit for this. This is a great idea. This is a great whatever, especially younger as a junior officer, even as a young major. And you start to realize boy, that's not productive. That's not helpful at all. I had the opportunity to go as a young major, to attend the School of Advanced Military Studies at Fort Leavenworth. And, one of the big things that the school still teaches young majors is, you want to be more than you seem, remain in the background, right? And it doesn't matter who gets the credit, right? Whether it's Nick that gets the credit, whether it's Ed that gets the credit, it doesn't matter. And I think eventually most leaders, especially most leaders that, perceptive leaders, they know who's behind, an initiative, a project or whatever, right? But I think, and I've observed several folks through my time in the Army that they don't care who gets the credit. Mm-hmm. And they're just, but the folks that are there, they know, even if someone else is getting recognition, they know, hey, that was Nick's idea, right?
Right.
Nick was behind that initiative, and so much credit's got to go to him for that, right? And that's where I think it takes perceptive, self-aware bosses, leaders, to recognize that in folks that are beneath them. And sometimes that might not be right away, and that's frustrating to folks. Sometimes it might take some time to say, I thought that was Nick, but making someone up, right? Actually, Bill did like a lot of work on that project, and that's incredible. I'm going to make sure I go recognize Bill. But I think that's up to leaders, to folks that are in, CEO type positions, command positions, to recognize that who's actually driving things down at the lower levels.
Yeah. I've also found that when culture is really strong within a unit, culture will police itself. If you have someone who is stepping out of line, who is being ego-driven and arrogant, sometimes the leader doesn't even have to step in.
That's right.
The organization will pull that guy or girl aside and say,
"That's right.
Hey, that don't work here."
That's right.
And I love seeing that.
Yeah,
that's strong.
I'll give you a great example. As a young lieutenant, we were out doing some training. We were getting ready to go to Afghanistan. And I had said something to, and it was not, now it's a really funny story. When I was a 24-year-old, or 23-year-old lieutenant getting ready to go to Afghanistan, it wasn't very funny. But the story got out that like I was telling our first sergeant how to do training. And our first sergeant, this guy named First Sergeant Mike Sunshine, absolute legend, won the best Ranger competition as a young sergeant. I mean, guy was just absolute stud. Somebody you just, like, at me as a young lieutenant, looked up to this guy as like, this is what a senior non-commissioned officer, needs to be. Jumped into Panama, right? Just total stud. And it was one of those things that, game of telephone. By the time, what's the old adage, the lie gets halfway around the world before the truth has a chance to put its pants on. Mm-hmm. One of those types of situations. And I was like, wait, what are people saying? But anyway, it was that I was trying to tell the first sergeant how to do training. We were doing some live fires, but the lieutenants in the company, my peers, came to my office and they're like, hey, it was kind of, you got to watch your tone with the first sergeant. And I, as a young officer, I was like, number one, good on those guys that they came to me and they're like, hey, watch it a little bit there, young buck, you're brand new in the company. And I was like, okay, whatever I said didn't land the right way, wrong tone, wrong timing, whatever. So I need to be reflective of that and adjust moving forward. Mm-hmm. So, but it was 100% like my peers came to me and they're like, no. Like, this isn't going to fly in Apache Company, 1st to 501st.
Yeah.
So
that's great.
Yeah, it was good.
I was just thinking of this story. This actually happened a few months ago. This goes to show that, you constantly have to be aware of your tone, and you're still going to make mistakes.
Yep.
No matter how long you're doing it. We were on this call a few months ago, and I presented a business strategy and some initiatives to the group before they were vetted and before we really refined them.
Okay.
I shared them prematurely.
Okay.
And one of our advisors was on the call with me. And after the call was over, he asked me to, hop on a separate call. Say, let's just catch up real quick. And he kind of let me know, like, hey, we need to talk about these things before we share this to the larger group, because that was premature and those weren't vetted and we didn't lock those in yet. And I was offended.
Okay.
As the founder and CEO of BPN. And yeah. I said with a tone, loud and clear, got it. And I knew as soon as I said that, I was like, that wasn't right.
Yeah.
Because that conveyed the message from me to him, I don't care.
Yep.
I don't care what you're saying.
That's right.
Moments later, as I just reflected briefly, I realized I was in the wrong. I shared that information prematurely. I knew I was wrong.
Yeah.
I was defensive because I was called out for my mistakes.
Sure.
And no matter how much time, experience, how many times we've done it, we're still going to be offended because it doesn't feel good to be wrong.
That's right. 100%.
Yeah.
And that's where even, and it's in the article, right? That's, in your case, right? And I don't know if you had the opportunity to follow back up with your advisor, the guy who called you. That's the virtuous cycle, right? That's where that comes into play. Like whether you're a subordinate, whether you're the led or you're the leader, like that tone stunk.
Mm-hmm.
And that did not land the way I just did this with Tracy, last week about a conversation we had. And something that I said that I did not mean to land poorly, landed very poorly for her. And, I had to, some of it was my tone. And then some of it was choice of words. Like I had to walk that back. And then, it was okay. She forgave me, move on, all good. But how often does that happen in the business world, in the military, where that loop doesn't get closed, right? And you say something or you do something as a leader or as a subordinate, and then it's never followed up on. There's no like, shoot, my tone stunk. I really just need to go. And I think it's really powerful for a subordinate to say, hey, sir, hey, ma'am, like I was a little off on that. Apologies. I didn't have my best tone. I will in the future. There's
a lot of respect there.
There's a lot of respect there. And I think if, as I know folks have done that with me, hey, sir, I don't think what I said landed okay. And sometimes it might be overblown on a subordinate's part. You as a leader might say like, hey, no, we're good. Like I didn't take anything from that. Like you were just expressing yourself, a lot of opinions, a lot of ideas were getting thrown around. Like we're good. And they're like, oh, okay, good. Like the boss lady, boss man is good with what went down. And I think that can also create trust, right? That builds trust, that builds cohesion. Like, hey, even if there's an interaction that's not great, we still can then circle back on that, right? That's what that virtuous cycle is in there for. Like we can still circle back and say, hey, and you can do it as the leader. Hey, you provided this feedback in the meeting, like that wasn't great. That landed poorly with a lot of your teammates, a lot of your peers, et cetera. Like, shoot, and then here's why. All right. That's how you're developing folks to continue to be better, to continue to improve as a leader through the coaching, through the counseling in those instances, or through compassion on the other side of it, if something happens in someone's life, whether work life, personal life, et cetera.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's hard to, I'm thinking on my personal experience, it's hard to correct tone because it feels like they didn't really do anything wrong. Or, like someone says something with a tone and you want to correct it, but they didn't really say anything wrong. It's how they said it.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't know if I can correct it, but I think it should be addressed.
Yes.
Like this is the way I perceived what you said based off your tone.
Yeah.
Is this what you meant? And if so, let's have a further conversation. Because both energy and tone, they leave deposits.
That's right.
And the more positive, the more better. The more negative, the worse. But you keep depositing in one or the other.
That's right.
Over time. That builds trust or distrust.
That's right.
Anger or joy.
Yep.
Resentment.
Yeah.
All of those feelings kind of just like they build, they compound.
Yep. And also, and then hopefully what it builds too, right, is folks have the ability to say, like, again, even in the moment, it gets a little heated. Are you creating an environment as a leader where folks can circle back with one another and be like, hey, we were, it got a little heated, my apologies, and the other person, maybe they got heated too. Hey, my bad too. Like we're good. And then we can find some common ground on things we agree on or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I think that's just important as a professional in the military, because you're doing things you're passionate about, training for combat, training, potentially preparing for war, developing leaders, et cetera, or in the business world. But having that and setting that tone, that environment as a leader where, hey, sometimes it might get like we're passionate about the stuff that we do. So sometimes maybe that's going to come across in a tone that's not perfect, but we got to have a little bit of grace, right? As teammates and as leaders.
Mm-hmm.
And then as long as there's, I think, the appropriate self-assessment and reflection of like, yeah, I didn't do that the best, you know, or the leader giving the feedback or the subordinate coming up. I think that is really, really important and helps build the right environment where, hey, we're all mission focused on whatever that is, building the best supplement company in the world, building the best brigade in the Army, building the best battalion in the Army, whatever that is that you're trying to do. Those things, then that becomes the focus, not, you know, any sort of animosity or any sort of personal rivalry that can develop, you know, between folks.
Yeah. Passion can definitely influence tone,
Yes.
but I don't think it can be an excuse for
That's
tone.
right.
Because I'm a passionate person,
Yeah.
a lot of things, and my tone will be influenced by that passion.
Yes, that's right.
So I want to go back a little bit. You graduated and commissioned as an infantry officer in 2012. 2002.
Yep.
2002. How soon after commissioning in 2002 did you go to Afghanistan?
It was just over a year later. So was actually a Gold Bar recruiter, you know, for the ROTC folks who might
I was a Gold Bar recruiter too.
There you go. Yeah. Pretty good gig.
Yeah.
And that's where I met my wife, Tracy, who was working at North Dakota State University at the time. And then went and did the, you know, obligatory 9-10 months at Fort Benning, the basic course and Ranger School. And then by October, so commissioned in May of 2002, by October of 2003, we were in Afghanistan. So yeah, with my battalion.
What was that deployment like? What was the environment in Afghanistan like at that time?
The environment in Afghanistan at the time was not like it became in 06, 07, 08, where it was really, really kinetic. My battalion was unbelievably fortunate. We had some folks that were very seriously wounded on that deployment, but we did not lose anybody on that deployment. But a tremendous amount of resources at the time, early 2003, had went into Iraq. And so Afghanistan was a little bit more of an economy of force theater. And for a while, especially in eastern Afghanistan, our battalion, 1st of the 501st, we were kind of one of the very few shows in town. So we were extremely busy doing a lot of missions in eastern Afghanistan. In, you know, late 2003, you know, early, and we stayed there till we left in the summer, you know, August of 2004. So we were there about 10 months. But we were extremely busy for that whole time operating in Afghanistan. And a lot of that was, you know, when you look back now and read things about what happened in Afghanistan, that was a little bit of a lull period in terms of what the Taliban were doing and other folks were doing, because they, you know, obviously everyone's familiar with kind of the bombing campaign in, you know, in late 2001 and 2002 when we were going after bin Laden. But then after that, things kind of settled down in Afghanistan as the Taliban kind of retreated a little bit, as our presence ticked up. But then there's a tremendous amount of focus on Iraq. And so that was for me as a young leader, a tremendous environment to learn in. My platoon sergeant, a guy by the name of Mike Parrish, who I've talked about a lot, was unbelievably formative in my development as a young leader, because Mike was that guy, and we have a friendship that still lasts to today, was a guy that came alongside me and really helped coach and teach me as a young officer in terms of how to lead effectively at the platoon level, you know, in the infantry, and then also kind of give me the confidence that I needed as a young officer that, yeah, hey, sir, good decision here. but we got to work on this. We got to work on delivery for this. We got to work on, you can't rush to the objective before I have security set up, stuff like that. And so that environment for me as a young officer, and the leaders that I had, Tony Gibbs, company commander, he's general officer now. Harry Glenn, my battalion commander, was fantastic. Val Kevney, the battalion S3, was fantastic. He was later my battalion commander in 3rd of the 509th. Around so many good leaders. And so that was a great deployment for just learning and growth in an environment that, it was tough. It was combat, but we didn't lose anybody. And, the environment was not, you talk about Iraq, 06, 07, very, very, very much different environment on that deployment. Yeah.
Yeah. My cousin, Matt, he was with the 101st in 06, 07.
Okay.
So I was watching him come back home and going back overseas on multiple deployments during that time. And obviously very kinetic then.
Yes.
And I watched him transform into this man. And that's actually what influenced me to want to join the military.
Okay. Awesome.
I watched him go from this boy to this man.
Yeah.
And, coming home on R&R, and I was like, I want that in my life.
Yeah.
I want to grow and be challenged and change like that.
Yeah.
I'm curious, being in college, ROTC, how did your perception of what a leader was before commissioning change based off of your early experience being in combat with a platoon? Like, what did you think leadership was? And then what did you actually learn leadership was?
I learned so much in my role as a platoon. I was a platoon leader for that platoon, 1st Platoon Apache Company, 1st to 501st for, I don't know, it was 18, 19 months, I think is how long I led that platoon. But one of the things that I really learned in that platoon, and I had some fantastic, Mike Parris was a fantastic platoon sergeant. I had some really good squad leaders too. And one of the things that I had never really, we don't really talk a lot about in ROTC was the ability to, look, you're the platoon leader, you're still in charge, right? It's not a committee. But that doesn't mean that you can't take input and feedback from your non-commissioned officers on how we're going to go about things. Mm-hmm. And that was an area of leadership that I think as a platoon leader that I really grew in terms of when to say, hey, this is what we're doing, even if it's unpopular. But then also those times when, hey, Joe Hancock, Keith Hura, Mike Hensley, what are your ideas about how we should go about, whether it's attacking this objective, setting in this small kill team, whatever it is, give me your feedback, right? At the end of the day, it's going to be my plan approved by my company commander, but I wanted their feedback. It was important to get their feedback, as more technical experts as NCOs. And so that was an area of leadership that as a young officer, I think I really grew in, that really wasn't, we didn't focus on, there's peer leadership in ROTC, but not as much of the hey, there's going to be times when you need feedback from your non-commissioned officers. Yeah. And you got to listen to them because it can't always be just top-down delivered guidance for everything.
Yeah, that's good. You got to own the plan. You have to own the outcome, whether a success or failure.
Yeah.
But there's nothing that says you can't collaborate on the strategy and how you get there.
Yeah.
I actually, as you were sharing that, I used to do the same thing as a platoon leader, and then I started doing the same thing when it was, scaling and building BPN.
Yeah.
I thought I had to go off into the corner and build out the whole plan and then present this beautiful plan and strategy, and then everyone goes and executes. And then what I started finding is I was stepping on people's toes, trying to do their job for them when they have a different perspective.
Yeah.
They have different ideas to bring to the table.
Yeah.
And it's so much more effective if we collaborate on the plan and the strategy. But at the end of the day, I have to own whether it succeeds or fails.
That's right. Absolutely. We're doing, I'll just give you an example right now. So my command now, 3rd Security Force Assistance Brigade, I'm training and preparing some folks for an upcoming deployment, and it's a pretty unique mission in the Middle East. It's a mission that I've never done, and it's really unique. And so we're going through a mission rehearsal exercise next week, and we're going to do a rehearsal on Monday afternoon. And I invited all my battalion commanders to come, and I say, you don't have to come, but you're welcome to come. I was like, we've got a framework of a plan. What guy I used to work for, he called we got a might work plan here. So we got a might work plan, but I've never prepared for anything like this. And so we're going to step through what we have planned. But, these are battalion commanders. These are folks with 20 plus years, in the Army, super successful, talented folks. I'm happy to get your feedback to refine this and make it better because ultimately it's going to be my mission rehearsal exercise and my plan, but I want your feedback because I've never done anything like this. And so if you have a different perspective on how we can best prepare our advisors to go overseas, I'm all for it.
Mm-hmm. What do you guys do that during the workday?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I'm just thinking through some stuff right now and how I can compare my time in the military to building a business.
Yeah.
And I've said this before, but what was so unique about the military, I'm sure you can, add some coloring in context onto this. You're learning to lead people.
Yes.
And those people, those individuals, are not influenced by money, salary, power, bonuses.
Yep.
I mean, they know whether they work 20 hours a week or 100 hours a week, they're getting pretty much the same pay.
That's right.
And when you compare that to the workplace in America or the world, it is not that way.
That's right.
It's, okay, I'm working overtime. How much more am I making?
That's right.
What am I getting? It's transactional. And that's what's so powerful about our military is people are there for a mission.
That's right.
Selfless.
Yep.
Dedicating and committing their time, their resources, sacrificing a lot.
Absolutely.
For this country. It's absolutely amazing. And you don't see that anywhere else but our military, really.
Yeah.
And as I'm just thinking about these rehearsals and asking more people to do more stuff, and it's because they actually care.
Absolutely.
And they care about the mission and the success, and they want to see a win.
Yes.
That's what was very unique for me about my time in the military.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to lie, I'm very fortunate and grateful. I have a great team.
Yeah.
This team here will work whenever, on whatever, wherever.
Yeah.
There's never a complaint. So I'm not comparing this to BPN, but I know out there in the world, it is not like that.
That's right.
And that's what makes the military and the culture there and the people and the leadership such a unique experience.
It's the stories that, anyone who was in the military, certainly anyone who's in the Army, the stories that you have about the dedication of folks, probably at times even unhealthy. In Grey Wolf, I always made it a point to recognize all of our maintainers, all of our mechanics. Twice, both times before we went to the National Training Center, we did a brigade level formation and awarded all of our maintainers, every single one of them, right, who was in good standing with the Army, an award. Because that is how important their work was to the brigade. It's an armor brigade, right? Hundreds of vehicles, right? Tanks, Bradleys, Paladins, right? And if those guys and gals aren't firing on all cylinders, we're not going anywhere. And the dedication of some of these mechanics, right? That are, I mean, after the National Training Center, you go through something that's called regeneration operations. And you do it there, you know, and you have maintenance bays and stuff like that, if you recall that from your time. Just go out there, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, you're going to find mechanics that slept on a tank. You're going to find mechanics that slept on a Bradley. And they're not getting paid any extra. They're just that dedicated. And they worked until they absolutely couldn't anymore. They got to crash out and they're going to get up and they're just going to start again. And that level of dedication to me is and always has been so awe-inspiring, you know, in the Army, that, you know, sometimes when you reflect on that, you're just floored.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's not happening at your local Firestone. You know what I mean? It's not, you know, boy, I got to just sleep on Bill's car here to get it up for tomorrow because Bill's got to go to work at 8 a.m. It's like, no, we're going to close at 6 and, you know, I'll get to Bill's car tomorrow, you know, after I've, you know, had coffee and we had a staff meeting and whatever. And that's fine. That's a different world. But the level of dedication and the level of commitment from our, you know, from our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines is incredible. And if I could just share one thing, there was, let me see, I was a brand new young colonel and we were doing something called Project Convergence. It was part of what Army Futures Command does. It's where you get a lot of technology initiatives and emerging technology and you test it, you know, in a training ground. In this case, it was the National Training Center. And I was there as a young colonel working in the Army Futures Command, which is now Training and Transformation Command, a new command. And I was checking out in the PX. I was just, I think, buying lunch. And there was a young soldier behind me. And he's like, hey, sir. You know, clearly he was, I think, leaning towards getting out of the Army or something. You know, you've been doing this obviously for a long time. What is the motivation? What keeps you going, you know, 20 plus years in the Army? And I paused for just a couple of seconds and I said, and I don't remember the young man's name, but I said, hey, you know what for me it is? It is the ability for officers, non-commissioned officers, warrant officers, civilians, soldiers, all to come together and complete a mission, right? That is what is so powerful about our Army and our military. The ability to always, wherever you go, right? Hey, we got to build the team. We have got to build the team. One person, one NCO, one officer, you know, one civilian isn't going to do it for everybody. We have to build the team. How do we do that effectively? And then go about accomplishing our mission. That is what has always, for me, been so powerful and rewarding about, you know, for me specifically being an officer in the Army.
Yeah, it's just a unique and different experience that, to be honest, I miss.
Yeah.
And I tell this to Steph all the time, but I wish so badly that, and hope that my kids get to have the same experience.
Yes.
Because it was really powerful for me.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot. I learned a lot about myself.
Yeah.
I learned a lot about other people.
Yeah.
I learned what it means to truly be selfless.
Yes.
And be working towards a greater cause, a greater mission, and to make yourself feel small and little.
Yeah.
And that's been a valuable learning lesson that I think we need to apply to our entire lives.
Yes.
Like make ourselves smaller.
Yes.
For a much greater purpose.
That's right.
It's really easy to inflate ourselves and make ourselves look and feel and want to be bigger.
Absolutely.
Because like, how do we make ourselves smaller?
That's right.
Going back to, you know, what you shared with the tone of humility.
Yep.
Pride is our greatest enemy.
Oh, yes.
Humility is our greatest friend.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm curious, you know, compared to the deployment in 2002 in Afghanistan, was there a deployment after that was more kinetic, that really challenged you in terms of your leadership abilities and skill?
Yeah. 06, 07, Iraq, commanded Able Company, 3rd of the 509th, as a part of 4th Brigade, 25th with Airborne Brigade, which had just stood up at Fort Richardson, Alaska. So I was very fortunate. I was a lieutenant in 1st of the 501st, which became the base of 4th Brigade, 25th Infantry Division. That brigade, now it's different. It's 2nd Brigade, 11th Airborne Division now. But for a long time it was 425. And I was really, really fortunate, had the opportunity to go to the career course, right, which is one of our education development courses for young officers. Do that, attend U.S. Army Jumpmaster School as well, because it's an airborne unit, and then go back to Alaska, to Anchorage. And so I had the opportunity to command as a young officer. And I'd been in the Army for just over 3 years when I took command of ACO 3509. And with so many incredible young people in that company, folks that I still keep in touch with today. And moved through, trained for a year, and then deployed in the fall of 06 to Iraq. And then I made it until New Year's Eve of 2006. I was wounded, leading my company in combat. We had just gone out to Western Iraq. We were south of Baghdad, and we had just gone out to Western Iraq. And I was shot by a sniper talking to some folks. Actually killed a young man that I was talking to. The bullet went through him and hit my arm. So I left theater in early 07. But we had already lost 3 soldiers in Able Company. Staff Sergeant Link, Corporal Gifford, and Corporal Dustin Donica. We'd already lost them before I was wounded. And then we would lose 5. We lost 5 more soldiers after that. And I transitioned from the role of, and then I think for our battalion total, I think 3rd of the 509th, we lost 18 or 19 soldiers total in that deployment. So it wasn't the worst of all the folks that had gone over there during this time, during the surge. Mm-hmm. But it was more than many. And I went from a role as a young officer who, deployed over there at 26 years old, so 26, 27 years old, leading young men in combat, during an extremely dangerous time in Iraq, where the insurgents are actively trying to kill you every day, whether it was IEDs, snipers, direct attacks, didn't matter. People were trying to kill you. And I went from a role of being in that every single day for those 3+ months I was there as a company commander, and transitioned back home to Fort Richardson, where I was wounded, had multiple surgeries, but then now had to memorialize the men that we lost as a young man. So I'm still processing, my own grief. And frankly, I'm angry. I'm 26 years old. I trained with that company, built that company from the ground up. And now I'm wounded, and I had to leave theater to the point of I didn't want to leave theater. I wanted to just, hey, I'll stay and heal, and then put me back in the game, coach. And when my commander called me, it was the end of January. Val Kevney told me, hey, I'm going to leave you home to lead the rear detachment team. I put the phone down and I cried. I mean, like crying my eyes out. I was so mad that I couldn't go back to combat with the team that we had built in 3rd of the 509th. And then found myself over the next 5 or 6 months, especially where it was hard combat, giving memorial speeches for soldiers in my company that had passed away, and then soldiers from our battalion that died. And we're having almost monthly memorial ceremonies at Fort Richardson for these soldiers who have passed away, having to deliver casualty notifications to spouses whose husbands have died in Iraq at 26, 27 years old. Makes you grow up really, really fast. And so, yeah, that next deployment that I went on, very, very challenging. And for me was a hard time in my life there for that year plus, of losing soldiers, that you knew intimately, had trained with, but then also having to go back home and memorialize them was extremely difficult and challenging. And I would often feel really bad because it was hard to get through a speech in the chapel at Fort Richardson without, tearing up and welling up, almost to the point of blubbering, crying. But those were the emotions that I felt at the time, right? That's how hard those things hit when those young men, gave their life in service of our country, on the mission in Iraq. And so, yeah, that was a very, very challenging time. Tracy was, by my side the whole time, supported me, was incredible. But it was still, it was a very, very hard time.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Were you able to, in that moment or shortly after, be able to reflect and maybe think, there's something to learn here that I can apply to this next chapter to be a better, stronger, more effective leader? Like maybe I'm being taught something right here. Or was a lot of anger just coming out of it?
There was some just at the time, just straight up raw anger. For that, because, at the time, and I know that, your faith journey, Nick, and where you are now. And I grew up in a Christian home, had tremendous parents. But there were times where I was a little bit, not angry with God, but you're like, hey, why?
Mm-hmm.
What is going on with all of this? Why is this happening? Why is this happening to me? Et cetera. Now, I kind of came off that pretty quickly and adapted to my role as a leader for my battalion back at Fort Richardson. And I understood why my boss did it, because one of the things that I had that some of the other folks on the rear detachment and the brigade, and some of those folks they'd been to combat, they just hadn't been to combat with our brigade.
Right.
I had the benefit of the doubt when it came to just trust. And I could, my boss, Val Kevney, who's a tremendous leader, gave me full autonomy with the rear detachment. I didn't have to ask questions about extending people on leave, doing anything. He trusted me to make the right decisions because I had led for him both in the rear and in combat, and he trusted me to make the right decision. And that wasn't necessarily the case for a lot of my peers. And so I understood why my boss made the decision he made, because then he didn't have to worry about what was going on at Fort Richardson, right? And to work with his wife, Kim's tremendous, like one of the greatest humans on the planet, to work with her and help, set conditions. And at the time, my wife was working for Army Community Service. So to kind of be of service and help folks understand what's going on in theater, and then also be of service to my, the battalion forward and what I could do for them and my peers with, property accountability and all the kind of minutia that comes with Army leadership. I settled into that role and adapted to it and did well with it. But initially it was hard. right? Because at the time, you're hard charging, you've trained, you want to be over there. You want to be in the fight. And to ask, to kind of take that forward, and I'm sorry, long answer to your question. When I had the opportunity to take my company from the old guard to Iraq, I did apply a lot of the lessons, and I wanted to make sure we were not going over there we did end up doing some patrolling and things outside the wire in Iraq on that deployment in 2009-10. But we weren't preparing for that initially. And but in some of the training and the preparation, I wanted to take some of the things I had learned, both in combat and in preparing for combat, and apply them to Charlie Company 1-3 Infantry to make sure we were as well prepared as possible for anything that came our way. So there was learning, especially on reflection, when I got another opportunity to lead a company in combat, different circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
Iraq in 09-10 was a very different place than it was 06-07. You could be out driving on MSR Tampa. You could stand on the side of the road. You could have a conversation with somebody. In 06-07, someone was going to come shoot at you, or later that night, there was going to be an IED on the side of the road, right? That was not happening in 09-010, or 09-10. But I wanted to make sure we were as best prepared for our mission as humanly possible. And that was one of the things that when I reflected and I got another opportunity, I was like, I'm going to pour into these guys like I never have before.
Yeah, I can imagine you've seen the best and worst of people.
Yes.
Thinking about the preparation for a deployment in garrison.
Yeah.
That's one type of leadership requirement. And then the leadership requirements in a kinetic combat zone, Iraq, 06, 07. But then as you're sharing this, I'm thinking about the leadership requirements of post-deployment.
Yes.
It's leading people in a whole different way.
Yeah.
It's not in terms of preparation, but it's recovery.
Yes.
Mind, body, soul.
Yeah.
And it sounds like in some cases it's a family thing. Wives step up.
Yes.
Kids step up and volunteer and support whatever it takes to build that team back together, that family back together.
Absolutely.
I can only imagine how challenging that is for not only just for the families and the people, but in terms of testing your leadership.
Absolutely. I mean, and some of the, just to give a huge shout out to so many Army spouses and just military spouses overall, but especially during that time, from 03, 04 until for about 10, 12 years there, where folks were still consistently going to Afghanistan and then into Iraq. Some of the work that our Army spouses and then military spouses still do today, but particularly during that time when in the Army and in the Marines, you're losing a lot of folks in combat. And some of the work and support that our Army spouses provided to grieving families, to families of those who had been wounded. We had several soldiers in 3rd 519th that were very, very seriously wounded. Lost limbs, burned severely from IEDs, et cetera. The support provided to them. I mean, you want to talk about just being humbled and inspired. That stuff was incredible to witness, right? And see the power of when folks are coming together to help one another. And that still happens all across the military and especially in the Army. But that time in particular, when a lot of folks were consistently deploying and then we were losing folks at a pretty high rate, those were some tough times.
So you were in ROTC when 9/11 happened.
Yeah, I was a senior. I just started my senior year of ROTC. We were doing, you and I talked about Ranger Challenge this morning. We had just finished Ranger Challenge PT. in the Benson Munker Fieldhouse at North Dakota State University, and I was getting in my car to drive back to Concordia when I heard the news that the first plane hit the tower. And by the time I was walking to class at 9:30, the second plane had hit the tower, and the plane, I think, had hit the Pentagon already. And I'll never forget, I was leaving the building to go across to class. Now, all the classes got canceled that day, and all the professors told us to go back. But one of my friends, as I was walking out the door, he just looked at me. He goes, "Hey, Eddie, you're going to go to war." And he kind of said it in jest. But then as I walked out the door and kind of had a solemn moment, I was like, he's probably right. You know, we're going somewhere after this type of attack on our country. And sure enough, as we talked about, you know, a couple of years later, I was in Afghanistan along with a lot of other folks.
Because the first 3 years of your college experience in ROTC, you're not thinking Iraq, Afghanistan,
no,
going to war.
No.
But everything changes.
It changed like that.
Were people in ROTC dropping out and enlisting? Did that happen at all?
We might have had a couple. We did have some folks that I remember that were scholarshiped, you know, like 4-year type folks that they found a way out.
Get scared.
They found a way out of the program and of their commitment. And I'm sure some of that involved paying back money from their scholarship. And I remember as a Gold Bar recruiter working with folks who were going into a contract year or who were already there and moving, you know, towards commissioning. And you're like, this person's gonna, it's not in their heart.
Yeah.
They're going to leave. But similarly, we had other folks that then became interested and wanted, hey, what's ROTC about? Where's that going to lead me? And how can that lead me towards potentially serving my country?
Was there a shift in the energy of the ROTC department after that?
There was. And I think in a very positive way. Yeah, I mentioned this morning, my friend Chad Ghazni he became the battalion commander of that battalion. And Chad is an incredible leader. He became a pilot in the Army, Chinook pilot in the Army. He's retired now, but was an incredible pilot, served in the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment for a long time. And Chad had been enlisted before in 2nd Ranger Battalion. And Chad talked a lot about, you know, early on, and that was, you know, September 01, and then I was commissioned, but I was a Gold Bar recruiter, so September 02, so about a year after that, and there started to be the 1-year anniversary stuff, et cetera. And I remember, you know, as Chad talked to both his leaders on his staff, but then also the younger cadets, about what was going to be required of them and the commitment it was going to take. And it was neat. It was neat to see that out of a 24, 25-year-old guy who's leading an ROTC battalion, but has enough perspective and appreciation for what's going to happen in the path that these folks are going to have to follow. That he's kind of laying it out for them and inspiring them himself, because he was unbelievably fit, smart, dedicated, you know, et cetera. So that was neat.
Yeah, I can imagine those are the moments where leaders stepped up or fell behind.
That's right.
And you saw some people really step up.
You did. And then we had folks in our infantry officer basic course that were folks that were, you know, we had a mix. We had a really healthy mix of ROTC, officer candidate school, and guys who had gone to West Point. But so many of the guys that had gone or that were officer candidate school graduates, they were just like working jobs, you know? And then 9/11 happened and they're like, I'm going to go become an officer in the Army. I want to join the infantry and I want to go to Afghanistan.
That's
and
awesome.
Fight for my country. And it was really neat because these guys were, you know, working on Wall Street. They were, working jobs in downtown Chicago in the business world. And they're like, yeah, hell no. I'm going to go suit up for my country. And that was really neat to see. And there was a lot of soldiers like that as well that I had in my company in ACO 3509 and all across the Army that 9/11 happened. They were in late high school, and they're like, I'm going to join. I'm going to go serve my country. And it was neat to see and neat to have that. Like in ACO 3509, you could feel that energy from folks, how motivated they were, how hard they train. And we're training in Alaska where it's, 6 months out of the year, it's freezing and folks are getting out there and getting after it. You could feel that energy. It was neat.
I mean, you're preparing for a real fight.
Absolutely. 100%.
There's a real mission. It's not this made up, maybe it will come. Like, no, it's there. It's coming.
That's right. It was not the Krasnovians, it was real.
Yeah. The last thing I really want to touch on, and we briefly were discussing it when we were working out, is this difference between becoming an asset and a liability.
Yeah.
And if I think about your role over the years, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you are building and creating assets and you are eliminating liabilities.
Yeah.
How has that view as a leader shaped your approach to building your personal life, your fitness, your skills, your abilities, and others as well, and the power of becoming an asset?
Yeah, it's a great question, Nick. And I think, especially in the military, and then I'll speak to my personal experience in the Army, which, most of that time in the infantry or in units that are preparing to go to combat or go on an operational deployment. You've got to be ready. You've got to be ready not only from personally, I am ready to go and deploy and do things on behalf of my country, but you've got to be physically ready to do that, right? You've got to be physically very sharp and keep yourself sharp. The best leaders that I've worked for in the Army, they're not just doing physical training, from 6:30 to 7:30 during the, when they've got duty, at pick and installation. It's a lifestyle of staying fit and staying ready and staying sharp. And that so much, the folks that I have seen and that I've seen have a lot of success in the Army, they're doing that consistently. They are prepared mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally to go do whatever they need to do on behalf of their nation. And we really have to, obviously the Secretary of War just came out, that this was, back in the fall, big speech about, standards and making sure that our standards we keep our standards are very high, especially for physical training. And I think that is spot on. And it's up to all leaders throughout the military. And again, I speak to my experience in the Army, to do whatever you can to keep the knife sharp for your formation so that they are ready to go. And that they can be an asset for their squad, their platoon, their company, their battalion, their brigade, their division, et cetera, instead of being a liability.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I apply it to my own life now, post-military. I am not training for a race right now, for example.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean I'm not running. And I want to be an asset to the world, society, my family, my team. That guides my decisions in terms of the way I train, the way that I eat, the way that I rest, the way that I recover, physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. I always want to be an asset.
Yeah.
I never want to be a liability. And that's what drives me
Absolutely.
every day.
Yeah. It's a phenomenal approach to have. I worked for a guy in Alaska. He was our brigade commander on that deployment. That was really hard. His name was Mike Garrett, and he retired as a 4-star general. So retired as General Mike Garrett. And he was in incredible shape as a brigade commander. Now, and hopefully he listens to this, but I could still take him, right, as young Captain Arntson. But he was in incredible shape. And someone had asked him one time, "Hey, sir, why do you do PT?" Because he did PT so hard. I mean, the effort and the energy that he poured into keeping himself ready as a colonel at the time, and that he did for the rest of his career all the way through 4-star general, was incredible. And he just had a really good answer. He just said, "Hey, look, I want to live a long time. I want to be around for my kids and my grandkids, right? And as I see him now, right, as a grandfather in that role, like, he's an asset for his family because of how he takes care of himself, how he continues to, stay fit, stay super sharp. So he can be an asset for his kids, for his grandkids, for his wife, right, for his brothers, for his sisters, for his aging father, et cetera, right? And that is such a great, like, why are you working as hard as you're working? Like, I'm working as hard as I'm working so that I can live as long as humanly possible and be an asset for my family, right? Just at a very baseline level, even if you remove the military or anything like that. I want to be an asset for my family going forward.
Yeah, it's the quantity of life, but the quality of life as well.
That's right.
And not a quantity so that the quality of others decreases.
That's right. That's right. It's like you talked about that earlier, Nick, which is a great point. Like, making yourself like small, but like, it's not about me, but like, how can I make myself be a servant to others, right? How can I continue to serve, continue to lead, right? But as an asset.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Well, sir, I appreciate this. It's been a great conversation.
Yeah, you bet. There was one other thing I wanted to hit on a little bit.
Yeah,
if I can.
I'd love for you to do that.
The on something that I think just might benefit folks in terms of, because I think a lot of people, the way that they think about leadership, they're not really sure, hey, what does good leadership look like, right? We talked about, your energy and tone, right? Which is a great place to start in terms of how you as a leader interact with folks. Mm-hmm. I developed a little bit of a formula that if I can just share with you, it might help folks.
Yeah,
just to how folks can think about leadership. This is how I think about it and what I look for in leaders. The first thing is authenticity. Does the audio match the visual, right? Is the person being their authentic self, right? And I worked for a general officer who was an introvert. He's a fantastic leader, but he was an introvert. He didn't try to not be that. But in the times where he needed to really be an extrovert, he was. And he led and he did everything he needed to do and did it superbly, right? But at his core, he's kind of a quiet, introverted guy. And he never tried to shy away from that, right? He just knew when the right times were to, hey, I'm giving a speech. I'm giving, a presentation on leader development. I can't sit in the corner, right? We got to be out there. We got to project strength, et cetera, right?
It's a lot of confidence to know who you are and then own that.
That's right. And just be yourself, mm-hmm. right? So authenticity, right? Audio match the visual. And are you the person that you are, purporting yourself to be? Or are you trying to be someone else, right? The second thing is humility. We've talked a tremendous amount about humility on this podcast as a cornerstone of great tone and great leaders, but are you coachable? Are you teachable? And do you have the ability to say, I made a mistake as a leader? I did not make the right decision there. I should have made this decision. My apologies. I'm going to make up for it, right? Are you humble enough? So is somebody authentic? Are they humble? And then intellectual curiosity, which we hit on a little bit. Are you trying to grow, and are you trying to develop as a leader, as a person, right? Not just for your organization, but as a person. Are you generally intellectually curious? You want to learn new things? Are you interested in learning, hearing different opinions, right? Or, hey, I've got it all figured out. I don't need to hear Nick's opinion about X, Y, or Z. Or are you genuinely a curious and interested person in what other folks have to offer and learning new things and new skills? Authenticity, humility, intellectual curiosity are the numerators. The denominator is competence. If you had all those three things up front, you, Nick Bear, CEO of BPN, you are absolutely authentic. Audio matches the visual. Nick doesn't work out. We see the videos. Nick trains pretty freaking hard, right? He is humble, right? He is not always making it about himself. He is promoting the team, what everyone else is doing, et cetera. And, he is someone who's intellectually curious. He wants to learn. Well, Nick, if you didn't know anything about nutrition science and supplements and how to fuel the body and how to train, my guess is you would not be that great of a CEO for Bear Performance Nutrition.
Correct.
Right? You'd be great just as Nick the guy. Nick's humble. He is, he's curious. He wants to learn. But when we talk about competence in your profession, you've got to have that. You've got to have competence, right? Whether that's as a military leader, a business leader, et cetera. You've got to know what you're talking about when it comes to, for me, maneuver warfare, combat, right? Leading folks, et cetera. I got to know what I'm talking about. I got to know what I'm doing in that space, making decisions in combat, in training for combat, et cetera. If I can't do that and I don't know how to do that or lead a staff, lead a team, you could be all those other things. You're not going to be a great leader.
Yeah.
But where you see those four things, I think, where you see authenticity, where you see humility, where you see intellectual curiosity over a rock solid foundation of competence, I think you see great leadership. And if you start to analyze folks that you're that person looks good, but there's something missing. You know what I mean? Maybe there's a little something. That person, they might need a little humility. Maybe they're really competent, but they're missing one area. And maybe that can be rounded out by another team member, right? And then the whole team can improve. But for folks, as they look at what does really good leadership look like, I have found that formula to be really helpful as I look at folks inside the Army, outside the Army, whether it's a coach, of professional college team, whatever, and I start to look at them and analyze them, I look at it through that lens most of the time. Where you find great leadership, you have those four things in spade.
I love that. I love that to use also for evaluation reports of subordinate leaders.
Yes.
But one of the questions people ask me all the time is, how do I find a mentor or an advisor?
Yeah.
Using that formula to evaluate people.
Yes.
If they will be a good mentor or advisor to you.
100%.
And I love that you mentioned within humility, coachable and teachable.
Yes.
I believe a lot of times people just view humility as the opposite of prideful.
Yeah.
And it's putting other people first.
Yes.
Which it is. But you can put others first and still not be coachable and teachable.
Yeah.
And when you are uncoachable and unteachable, you are very hard to work with.
100%.
I have found the best leaders are open to and want feedback. They want to be coached. They want to be taught. They want to develop. They want to learn. They want to grow. I love that formula. That's great.
Absolutely. So anyway, I just wanted to, that's something that, I've had, it's existed on different whiteboards throughout my time in the Army, and wanted to share with you and your audience, and hopefully somebody finds that helpful.
No, that's super helpful. Well, I appreciate it. I have a lot of respect for you and what you've done, and the few times we spent time together. Man of character, man of God, strong leader, the resume to prove the credentials and credibility behind it. And there's a lot of people who talk about leadership, and it's another thing to have lived it and experienced it for 20 plus years.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you coming on here and sharing some wisdom of what you've learned that can be applicable to not only the military, business, but ourselves, our families, teams.
Yeah.
Leadership is it is a keystone to life.
Yeah.
It is an unlock for so much.
It is.
So I really appreciate you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Thank you for what you and your team do here at BPN. I shared this when we came for one of our sessions in Grey Wolf. You and your team do such an incredible job of inspiring so many folks, to you personally and your team, that they can, your motto is go one more, and it is perfect. It inspires so many folks to say, yeah, I saw Nick do this today. I'm going to go another mile. I'm going to do a few more push-ups, a few more pull-ups. And so I really appreciate what you and your team do for kind of pointing everyone just a little bit higher of like, I can push a little bit further. I can go a little bit further. I think that is a really neat aspect of what your brand is about. And it inspires probably more people than you know. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
You bet. Thank you.